Hey, welcome World Entertainment and our review for Picard Season 3, Episode 8, called Surrender. As usual, non-spoiler and then spoiler. This episode picks up from the last when Vadic takes command of the Titan. They've captured the crew. They're still looking for Jack and they want Jack to come to the bridge. And this episode, I would suggest, I've heard a lot of people say this, like people who've seen the entire season, so the likes of Robert and Moira Burnett and Gary from Nerdrotic and Dave Cullen, that episode 8 and 7 are best watched together, back to back. I definitely agree with that, but this episode is a stronger episode than the last one. The last one was more the expedition dump, whereas this one kind of shows you the stakes and pushes the story forward. Overall, I'd give this one, I'd probably give it about an 8.5. 8.5, yeah, 8.5's fair. What? Trying to think now how not to spoil it. So we've the situation going on the Titan where Jack wants to surrender, basically, like he did last week, but he wants to give himself up because Vadic is threatening to execute crew members. While that's happening, we're reunited again with Riker and Troy on the Shrike, and they have conversations about why he left and what they were feeling, and you get more of a understanding of exactly why he left. And when I say left, I mean left Troy and went back out into space. It was a little more than just the sun dying. So the plot for this is they need to try and get control of the Titan. Jack starting to understand a bit more of what he can do with his abilities. What else have we got? We of course have Vadic on the bridge with crew members, and she's giving Jack 10 minutes to come to the bridge, or she executes someone and will continue to do so every 10 minutes that he doesn't come to the bridge. And as I said, we got some stuff going on the Shrike. So a stronger episode than last week's. Yeah, 8.5 out of 10. This one, unfortunately, but it kind of happens very quickly, does have the second but last F-bomb in this. So just be prepared for that. Other than that, there's nothing much I can say without spoiling it. Except, should I say? Yeah, you may as well know who's in this one. Worf and Raffi are back in this one, of course. Riker and Troy. All the original TNG. And there's a brief glimpse. Well, a bit more than just brief, but there's a glimpse of someone familiar. I suppose you could say two, but one isn't a person. Anyway, with that, I'll get into the spoilers. So, with spoilers now, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, and a 1. So, the episode starts off with Vadic on the bridge, and she is giving commands to the changelings to turn the lights off on the ship so the crew can't see. Then she says take the sound they're hearing so they can't communicate. And then take away the path ahead of them, so she locks them in areas. And while they're on the bridge with the bridge crew anyway, all we're hearing is some of the crew and corridors being executed, basically. Changelings were hunting them down, just killing them. To which Vadic then is choosing someone to execute, and opens hailing frequency and says, Jack, you've 10 minutes to come to the bridge, otherwise I'll be killing people. So while this is all happening, Beverly, Jean-Luc, Jack and Sydney are in sick bay. I'm assuming it's the sick bay, trying to regain some control of the ship, trying to get any type of sensors back. And while they're doing that, Jack kind of steps back to the wall. His eyes turn red again, and we see from his point of view him walking out the door, and there's a crewman standing there whose eyes then turn red. And then we're in that crewman, and he's got a phaser rifle. He turns, he starts walking. There's a dead crewman on the ground. He walks a bit more, turns around, there's one nailed to the wall. Then he turns again, and there's one that's still alive, but barely. She's cowering. And then looks up, and there's a changeling and gets shot, and Jack comes back to sickbay. Then we're on the Shrike, and we're with Riker and Troy, and this is where they have a bit of a conversation about him explaining, when he left and in the nebula, he felt just despair and everything else. But by the time it came out of the nebula, of course, the nebula was a life form. All he wanted to do was see Troy's face, and they make a couple of jokes about the changelings that took Troy. It came to the home as Riker, and Riker's like, how did you know it wasn't me? And she's like, oh well, you're good in bed, bad at making pizzas. He says, oh, so just like me. Which he's like, no, as soon as they arrived, she knew. So then we're back on the bridge, and Seven is talking with Shot, like, of course, what's her head? Vadic is still getting ready, trying to find Jack and stuff, but Seven and Shaw have a bit of conversation where Shaw's like, you should have known what to do. You should have blown the turbo lift. And Seven was like, I'm not about to exchange or take lives to save some in terms of her own people. And he's like, you're Starfleet, that's not an option. Stuff like that. Then we go to Geordi, his other daughter, who's his real daughter in life, and Data, and they unplug Data from the core, which, because Lore is more in control, so they plug that out, saying what Lore can't be connected to, he can't interfere with, and immediately the systems go out, and it's Vadic's taking full control. So Jack once again wants to go to the bridge, give himself up, and explains that he's got some sort of abilities. And Picard and Beverly don't know what to make of this. Beverly scans him and says, like, your brain activity is normal. And Sydney steps up and says, no, look, he's used them on me and saved my life. So the only way they can gain control of the ship is the only computers they could use to put in codes. There's a fail-safe command code that captains all have, from commanding officers, but it can that will regain control, but it can only be put in the bridge. So Jack is like, well, with these abilities, I could possibly be someone on the bridge. And that way we can try and put the code in. So while that's happening, we go to the bridge. They're like, okay, they give him the chance, and the Helms guy, who says he's a tactical officer, but he seemed to be the navigation officer, the Asian Bajoran dude, his eyes go red, and he reaches over and he starts typing in the code, and he's about to hit enter to regain, and Vadik catches him, grabs his hand, and was like, how the hell do you know Picard's code? And realizes it's Jack, and starts talking to Jack. So she's like, I want you to see this and stuff, and the Jack loses the connection with the guy, and so Vadik puts that bald alien woman, who I believe is one of the security chiefs, puts her on her knees and sticks a phaser to the back of her head, making it seem like she's going to execute her. What's her name? Ensign Asmar. Asmar. Then walks around, and she's looking at Seven, and Seven wants to like fight. She's like, leave her alone, take me, kind of stuff. And you know, Sean, everyone's trying to push her back. So Vadik goes and gets the Bajoran guy then, and puts him on his knees and asks what's his name. And he tells her his name, Mora, Lieutenant Mora. And she says, no, tell me about who the people you love. Who have you got? And he says, a son. So she's like, okay, so just Jean-Luc has a son. Why don't you tell him to come to the bridge? And he says, I can't because I'm Starfleet. And Vadik walks around and makes it look like she's going to shoot Ismar, however you pronounce that, and shoots the Vulcan instead, the bald Vulcan woman, Lieutenant Tavine. Shoots and vaporizes her. So now Jack really just wants to get to the bridge, and she says, you know, you've 10 minutes or we just repeat this process. Then we're back to the strike, and this is when we find out some stuff about why Riker really had to get away. So it wasn't just the fact that their son died. It was the fact that Deanna was using her telepathic powers to take the pain of that and the memories of that away from Will. And Will didn't appreciate that. And of course, Deanna tries to explain to him, look, I didn't just grieve for me. I was feeling everyone else's grievance over it. And then she said, you know, the only thing I forgot as a counselor is you can't skip to the end of the grieving process. And they hook it out, and then another big changeling comes, and Riker's like, okay, here we go. And he takes the force field down. All of a sudden, a blade comes through his chest. He drops, and it's Worf. Worf is back. Worf vaporizes down the thing, and then we get this hilarious moment. So Worf is like, Deanna and Riker give Worf a big hug, and Worf's like, you know, my personal space is being greatly violated. And then Worf goes on to say, Deanna, I've counted the days since I've last seen you and all this stuff. It's like the waves and the ocean stuff. And Riker's like, is this a rescue or a continuation of the torture? Deanna tells him, and Worf just is going on and on and on. Riker's just like, this is inappropriate. Like, but he's like, there's something you just need to see. So then we're back on the Titan. I was going to say the Enterprise. The Titan. And they realise Sydney says she could get a program that could take control back. That she's been constantly looking for any avenue to get control, any control back. And she says she could do it, but it would take a year. But her father could do it in about 2 months. They need somebody who could just run through it at some crazy speed. And of course, we all know who that could be. So Picard goes to I'm assuming it's the main computer room, where Geordi, his other daughter, and of course Data / Lore is. So Picard, Beverly, Jack, and Sydney show up with phasers drawn. The door opens. Geordi and the other daughter have their phasers drawn, and Elandra, that's her name. Elandra is the other daughter. Elandra LaForge. Geordi says, 6 years ago, you gave me a gift on Virgil tree or something, he says. And he's like, what was the gift? And Picard says, Chateau Picard, year something, which you said makes her made your mouth very dry because your tasting wine is as pedestrian as you're tasting something else. And he's like, yeah, it's him. So Picard has the idea to, obviously they need Data, but he says, what if we take down the petition? Because there's the petition in this new Data that's separating Data and Lore. And Geordi's like, well, Lore's infinitely more powerful than Data, so if we do that, there's no way we can stop it. Once that petition is down, we can't put it back up. So whatever happens has to happen. So they're like, we have to do it. We have to try. So they do it. And Lore starts taking over Data. Data's taking out things off his memories. So the first thing he picks up is the Sherlock Holmes hat. Then he picks up the Sherlock Holmes pipe, and Lore takes the pipe off him and just says, it's all going to turn to dust, and it all kind of disappears. Then we're back on the strike, and I don't know whether it's the bridge. It doesn't look like the bridge. But Worf brings Riker and Troy to see what the strike has and what they wanted from the Daystrom Center. Raffi's there, of course. They have Picard's body, and they were removing his frontal cortex for where the disease is. I almost remember the name of it. And they can't figure out why. By the way, Worf and Raffi are there, managed to get there via a cloaked shuttle. So while they're waiting for Data to try and beat Lore, they need a distraction. They need time. So Jack goes to the bridge. And on the bridge, he's holding a bomb. And he's basically, Vadic says, like, do you think that's going to kill me? And he goes, I haven't a clue, but I can tell you it'll definitely kill me. And you seem desperate to want me alive. So while they're there, we're back with Data. And when the Data and Lore thing, we're kind of in like a vision type thing where the two of them are. And this is where we get not one, but two items are people memories, I should basically say, which were great nods. The first one, then, by the way, Data just starts handing all of his memories to Lore. So he gives him a deck of cards. He's like, this is the deck of cards that I played many games with my friends. They're yours now. And he gives them to Lore, and he gives other things to Lore, and then he brings down, as soon as you see it in his hand, you know exactly what it is. It's the little hologram of Tasha Yar. And he turns it on, and we see Tasha Yar. And he hands that to Lore, and Lore just makes it disappear. This is where the name of the episode comes from, because Picard and Geordi are watching the screen. Geordi's like, Lore's winning this. Like, there's next to no data left. There's one part left of him. And Picard says, like, this doesn't look like Lore's win. This looks like surrender. Hence the name. The name of the episode is Surrender. So while Jack wants to know what the hell is going on, who the hell he is. And Vadic starts kind of saying, oh, you've seen it, haven't you? You've seen the red door. You hear the voices, all this stuff. Meanwhile, by the way, she sent all the crew into be locked into the observation lounge, but Seven comes running back out. And she's not quite telling them who or what he is, but she's like, she clearly knows what's going on. She's like, you hear the voices, and she had the same thing. There was so much silence, and then there was so much noise, and then we go back to Data and Lore. And this is when we get the next, I suppose, cameo, if you like. That was a nice touch, and it's the last piece of Data's memory. It is none other than Spot. Spot the cat. The OG. And he tells Lore, in many ways, this little creature taught me love. And he hands Spot to Lore. And that's it. Data's gone. Data's erased. Lore wins. But all of a sudden, Lore starts glitching out. And can't figure out what's going on. And Data comes back and he completely takes over. And they ask, like, Lore says, what's happening? And he says, exactly what I knew you couldn't resist. I gave you all my memories and you only saw them as trophies. So they kind of, Lore is basically erased, but he's not quite erased, in the sense that this new body, this new Data, is now officially 100% Lieutenant Commander Data. But there's a tiny piece of Lore in there, as well as B4 and Dr. Soon. So once Data reawakens, they're like, Data, we've need your help. We need it. And he goes straight away, he's like, say no more. Boom, he instantly takes back control of the ship, says, greetings, intruders. This is your extremely pissed off security interface speaking. Feel free to vacate the ship. Then Jack presses the button on the bomb, and it's not a bomb, it's a personal shield. So him and Seven have a shield around them, and he tells Picard now. And they open what I've never seen before, an emergency hatch on the bridge, which is basically the view screen opens up and it sucks Vadic and the other changeling with her out into space. This is also where we unfortunately get the F-bomb. Vadic drops the F-bomb. But her and the other changeling get sucked out into space. They freeze and she hits the Shrike and shatters into teeny tiny pieces. The crew come out, take back control of the ship, and Shaw tells Seven, you have command for this one, and she gives the order to destroy the Shrike, to which they do. Then we get a glimpse of, while all this chaos is happening, Raffi is fighting a few changelings. They're hand-to-hand combat with knives, which I still don't understand. What is it with knives in this series? It's like, you phasers, for Christ's sake. She beats them. Worf comes walking up and was like, yeah, you're still leading with your right shoulder and stuff. Then Riker and Troy come in. And then we get a great scene, and I'm not going to lie, I got that little bit of a lump in the throat. We finally get the true conversation, the one we should have always got, with Data and Geordi. When Geordi discusses, basically, you're my best friend, and now you've experienced death and stuff, all this time, and what it means to him to have him back, and Data's like, I know, and stuff. It's one of those conversations that it's something you wanted to see and you finally get. And then we get the scene we all wanted as well. We finally get the OG band back together in the observation lounge. The whole crew, i.e. Picard, Riker, Data, Geordi, Worf, Beverly, and Deanna. And Riker even says, it's been a hell of a long time since we've all sat around a table like this. Troy says to Beverly, even though you weren't here, you were for me during the difficult times and stuff, and even some of the good times. Beverly says how much she missed everyone, but she always thought about them. Worf says, in typical Worf style, he's slain many people and wanted to considered sending the heads of his slain victims to each of them as gifts to let them know he's thinking about them. But then he was told that might come across as passive aggressive. So, and Troy, when the scene in the corridor with Raffi, Worf and stuff, Troy almost faints and says there's a great darkness on the ship. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. Federation, or not Federation Day, again I call it Frontier Day. It's only a few hours away, and they need to figure out what the hell's going on. And they realise whatever it is, they need Jack for. So whether it's his abilities or what. So Troy says, it's time I meet your son. And just before we go there, we see a shot of the Titan flying off and cloaking. So she's still got the cloaking voice. So Troy is with Jack. She takes his hands and they're trying. She's like, do you see the door and stuff? And he doesn't want to go through the door. He's terrified of what's on the other side. And she says, I'll be with you this time. It's time to open the door. And right as his hand grabs the handle and the door opens, it's the end of the episode. But we hear a voice saying, Jack. That female voice we keep hearing. And that's the end of the episode. Right as the door was open, I was like, oh, don't you end? And it ends, and you're like, damn you! But that's the episode. Episode called Surrender, so we officially have Data back, and the entire crew are back together. And from what I understand, episodes 9 and 10 are just, balls to the wall, warp speed ahead. So anyway, that's the review for episode 8 called Surrender. As I said, 8.5 out of 10. Probably could be a 9 if you watch 7 and 8 together. Which I will do once I finish watching the series. I'll go back and rewatch all of it anyway. So, that's it for this week. So until next week, cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.